Hello. Hi, I'm back for another week, and we are going to be talking about the full moon a lot. So, the full moon is going to be in Gemini on Thursday, and it's going to be very interesting because, uh, you know, the the vibe after Scorpio season going into a full moon in Gemini is very different, and it's more curiosity, a little less intense, and um, it should be a boost for people after everything that we've been going through. It's going to be a welcome energy, welcome full moon. Um, so yeah, this week is gonna be a lot different than what we've been going through. Like I said, the energies are shifting. We've got full moon that is the fire and air elements coming together. The sun is in Sagittarius. It's Sagittarius season. And this full moon is going to be really fanning the flames of Sagittarius season. Um, and, in a good way. In a good way. Let's look at the chart. All right. Let's see. Go. Since today is actually Wednesday, when I'm recording this on December 3rd, 2025, I wanted to bring us back into Wednesday before the full moon and talk a little bit about the aspects that the moon is making today. The moon made a lot of aspects today, and one of the more important ones was the one where it's an opposition to Mercury. So the moon in Taurus before going into Gemini is in opposition with Mercury and making a conjunction to Uranus. And Uranus and Mercury are not quite in opposition yet, but the moon is connecting them. So it's a little taste of this like spontaneous something that's going to come out of this opposition. And so today, as the moon was still in Taurus, going by Uranus, there is a clue here for for all of us. And so with the moon being in Taurus, that could be about our financial situation, especially with the axis being Taurus and Scorpio. It's going to be about our finances and our resources. Um, yeah, relationships also. That's a big one. Relationships between people or between institutions, uh, because the ruler of Scorpio is Pluto, and with Mercury um, going direct through Scorpio again, sort of retracing those steps from the retrograde, Mercury is going to revisit some of the themes that were already gone over twice before. So there should be not a lot of surprise because you should know what's coming, actually, if you've been paying attention. Uranus is surprising, but it's not like you didn't know it was coming. And a lot of us can see our financial institution needing some kind of a boost or something to, help. And very interesting some of the things that were announced in the past few days leading up to this moon conjuncting Uranus and opposing Mercury, bringing together their opposition before they actually are officially opposing each other one last time. In this particular configuration, because when Uranus moves out of Taurus, then we won't be having Mercury in Scorpio opposing. It'll have to be Mercury in Sagittarius opposing Uranus. And so this is really like some of the last pressures for something uh, new, for a spark of life, a new life to come out of this opposition. And the moon brings the element of the way that we feel about things. And nobody does anything without feeling the need to do it. And so that's why the moon here triggering this opposition is important because it has to do with the way that we feel about our resources, the way that we feel about the monetary system, um, probably because the moon is on the side of Uranus. There's more feelings about the futures of crypto because crypto is technologically based and Uranus is more in alignment with that. And Uranus and Taurus has been good to crypto. And we might, we've seen crypto slip a lot in the past few weeks, right? And for some people, it seems like it's proof that it's the end, right? But for other people, it's exciting opportunity to get crypto at a lower price. So it just depends on how you're feeling about it, honestly. So that's the one thing that I wanted to point out about the moon there before the moon moves into more of a full moon position in Gemini. And so the moon moves into Gemini later on tonight at like 6 p.m. Pacific. Mhm. And mhm. So yes. And then the moon moves into starting the opposition to Black Moon Lilith before starting the opposition to uh, the sun. I'm sorry, I missed Venus here. So starting that opposition to Venus, um, that will be happening early in the morning on Thursday, very, very early, 1 a.m. Pacific time. And that's interesting that the moon will be opposing uh, Venus and Black Moon Lilith conjunct together because it seems like Venus in Sagittarius is really getting more of that flavor of freedom and uh, like adventure and like a rebirth feeling. And um, this is why our finances might be experiencing somewhat of a death and rebirth because there is Black Moon Lilith there that is, talking about a repressed system And it's, not really hard to see that all kinds of other ways of surviving monetarily have been suppressed. We've all gone with the fiat system for so long, and we have talked about the fact that this system might be dying, and every time this, death theme comes around to our monetary system, there's going to be a theme of rebirth right after that. It's just going to keep happening in cycles like that until we truly rebirth a new system. And um, so Venus in Sagittarius this year, Venus has been through a lot of um, conversations with other planets, having a retrograde early this year, along with Mars and, all of the personal planets were all in retrograde early this year. And it was like they were all having a conversation about a restart, a rebirth, renewal. And because of all of that retrograding together, they're all kind of clustered together really well all year long. And so every time the sun moves into a new sign, we have all our planets, all of our personal planets, um, all of the personal planets are there close by. And um, it's been a really special year for that. It's felt like a lot of intense energy on each sign, but there has been a tearing down and rebuilding of the entire zodiac this year. And it really started out with the North Node being at 0 degrees Aries before going into Pisces. And so, the focus has been on 0 degree Aries, and that is really talking about having a rebirth, a renewal, a whole new start. And some people, when they picture a whole new start, of course, there has to be a tearing down of the old. And that's a lot of what we've been experiencing. And with Uranus going back into Taurus, and it's really been about taking down some of that old stuff, taking down the old boulders that keep us from advancing. And it's clearing the way for next year to advance even quicker. This year went by really quickly because of all of this working and um, the working on each sign, the clustering up, and it's like there's intensity inside each sign, um, just bringing a new meaning, not new meaning, but like a new flavor that we've never seen before coming out of each sign of the zodiac. Um, just more of an evolution. Because I'm not talking about like completely changing the zodiac. I'm talking about how evolution works. Nothing really stays exactly the same through all of these cycles. So I'm getting sidetracked. So the moon comes into Gemini, sparking our thoughts to just multiply and you're going to be thinking about a lot of stuff. Your mental programming is at the forefront during this full moon in Gemini. And one of the reasons why I brought up the nodes, the North Node being at 0 point, the 0 point of Aries, because we'll be experiencing not only Saturn and Neptune on the 0 point Aries next year in February, but right here and right now, this full moon is going to be squaring the nodes, which are carrying with them, the nodes are carrying with them a sense of renewal and rebirth that, the nodes move backwards through the signs. And so it makes a lot of sense that the 0 point Aries for evolution goes back into Pisces because sometimes um, a more authentic version of evolution involves a very much deeper understanding of the past because you really can't properly evolve forward without that strengthening of your roots. It's like the idea of a tree growing taller in the sky and deeper into the roots of the earth. And that is the process that we're going through right now. And, what we can see as sort of like a cross of matter happening between the nodes and the full moon. So let me just advance this until the full moon, because that way we can see. 13 degrees of Sagittarius and Gemini. And the nodes are at 13 degrees of Virgo and Pisces. And so this cross is mutable. It's about the changing, it's about change, what needs to be changed. After we started something and we maintained it, what needs to change in order to start a new system that will work even better. And that's how evolution works through the modalities. And um, and so we're seeing this very important full moon, and it's at this, crossroads with destiny and fate with everybody. And so, it is very important, even though it doesn't carry the heaviness that other seasons like Scorpio season carry. And so, um, very much this full moon is going to be about the rising of the phoenix and the rebirth. There's some aspects unfolding this week, um, during and after the full moon. And these aspects seem to be very supportive for this crossroads with destiny. And so we want to take a look at these nodes again, the North Node in Pisces, the South Node in Virgo. This North Node in Pisces is really about spiritual growth, about surrendering, um, Let's see. And the most interesting thing to me that the Pisces archetype is about Christ consciousness and all of this talk about, the second coming of Christ. And I think it's beautiful because I obviously believe that astrology has its place in spirituality and even in the story of Jesus. I do believe in that. And um, one of the beautiful things about what's going on right now with the revival of Christianity is that the North Node is in Pisces, which is about Christ consciousness. And with the South Node in Virgo, um, it is look it looks like the image of Mary on the crescent moon to me. And so we have these beautiful aspects that are happening during this full moon that they might get overlooked because of how wonderfully spiritual it is. And so my advice basically is to take some time and to just try to get a little bit of meditation in, a little bit of prayer in, whatever it is that you believe in that takes you into silence. Because this beautiful full moon in um, this mutable cross with the nodes is going to bring a gift, a message, because the moon is going to be full in Gemini, and Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury brings messages into the mind. And with Mercury making a opposition to Uranus, there's going to be um, spontaneous spiritual realizations, deep spiritual realizations. And you might be accessing some of the deepest emotions that you have inside of you, which is really an amazing thing. It's a beautiful moment to be having. And the there's a big, beautiful water trine happening, and this is very supportive of accessing deep ancestral emotions, deep ancestral healing, because the alchemy of healing really is only accessed through our emotions. And so this water trine with we've got Jupiter in Cancer and we've got Mercury in Scorpio, and here we have Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. And so we have a lot of symbolism that is occurring during this full moon that is about a spiritual rebirth, spiritual revivalism. Um, a lot of people might be surrendering their spirit, stop fighting against the flow of the soul And when I say surrendering the spirit, I mean in a good way, um, to the idea of that Christ consciousness. Um, and I know that a lot of dogmatic scripture has tried to describe Christ consciousness and tried to pin it down on paper, you know, but I am actually believing that um, you can only receive this Christ consciousness through an open heart. And in order to open your heart, you have to open your mind, right? And so there's um, a sort of like a hierarchy of opening in the inside of the body realm that will bring in more of the experience, like what people call Christ consciousness. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's a big misconception happening in um, popular culture about what and who studies astrology, what is astrology, um, where does it come from? Is it actually something that's okay to do? Is it, people are questioning astrology in a way because they don't know if it's okay to be looking at the stars, which the creator put there, and thinking about the meaning which the creator put inside of us. And so I just wanted to put out there, during this time that I truly do believe that when we're looking at the stars, we're looking at a map that the creator has given us on purpose so that we can not be so lost. And, it is fine and all to put your trust in another human being, but I believe that, um, honestly, sometimes when I'm looking at the stars and reading charts, it's like, well, this is obviously the language of our creator. Obviously, it's too beautiful and it's too much of a wonderful, beautiful dance to not be. So, that's just my little part. That's just my little speech about my belief because I believe that the planets and this full moon is really a big opening for bringing in a new type of evolved consciousness that has been prophesized as Christ consciousness. Uh, and I don't want anyone listening to me to mistake what I'm saying as it's going to be easy, because it isn't actually. It's actually not very easy. So, so that's something to consider. Opening your heart, opening your mind so that you can open your heart is not always an easy thing to do. Um, and I believe that is one of the really important main messages to take away from this full moon that's happening. Um, like I said, I think it's a really beautiful opportunity. I think it's very much different feeling than what we've been going through. And I see it as a moment of grace that we can all be leaning into, especially during these holidays. This holiday season, um, it's been extra financially tight for some people. It's been um, tense for other people who have to deal with like family who have different beliefs than them. I understand, um, there are a lot of things that are going on in real life that are very, very difficult. And that's why I think it's important to take a few moments with this full moon on Thursday, um, full moon at 3 p.m. Pacific. And anytime around then, anytime. It doesn't have to be exactly on the dot, but anytime that you can have a moment to just think about what it would take to open your heart a little bit more and just let the silence come in, like a prayer. Yeah. And so, what else is happening? We have Mercury in conjunct with Chiron during this time. And this is why I said it's not going to be easy. This particular in conjunct is more about awareness, though. Mm, yeah. So being more aware of your wounds, becoming more conscious of your wounds in a way where it's giving you an opportunity to heal. It's an opportunity to feel those wounds again the same way that you always have, or to feel those wounds and to um, ask yourself, what are you meant to learn by this feeling? What is that feeling trying to teach you? Mm. Because on Friday, um, we run into Mars being in a trine with Chiron. So Mars in a trine with Chiron is, uh, you know, it's going to be a little bit more activating with those wounds. And so if you spent the day of the full moon day feeling those wounds and just going through that cycle the way that you always do, then Mars coming along in the trine to Chiron might be like quick to inflame some kind of emotional distortion, um, it's highly likely that if you get into that state where you're wounded, then those wounds will be magnetizing that particular wound to come and revisit you. And so that's why I'm saying that when you feel the thoughts come during the full moon that is asking you to act differently this time, to act in a more wise way. Um, with Mars being in Sagittarius there, um, there's inflammation or there's wisdom. So either you're gonna get really, really, really inflamed, and depending on where this is happening in your chart, it could be like inflammation in your body too, because sometimes the connection with trauma is in your body. And so, you think about traumatic events, you think about your wounds, your emotional wounds, and they show up as physical wounds, like inflammation. And again, trying to have a little bit of silence, trying to not force the answer to come to you, but let it just come in. So try not to force things as you're going through these processes. Yeah. And later in the night on Friday, the moon goes into Cancer, um, being more at home in Cancer. Um, but the moon is also still carrying that full moon energy through, right? Until the new moon, really. Uh, so we're going to be feeling um, more into our family again, um, ancestry, and just really, it's a really good time to do some self-care stuff. Every time the moon is in Cancer, try to get some self-care in, take a bath, um, because there is, um, healing the thoughts that will heal you will come to you if you take care of yourself. And, obviously, like taking a bath, a lot of times for me, it helps me, it inspires me, heals me. And if things come up that are about my wounds, then ultimately it's very safe place um, to just sit with those feelings. And that might be what this moon going through Cancer is going to ask you to do is probably sit with those feelings that have been coming up, that have been flying around, the sort of the ashes of your emotions flying around in the air after that full moon. Um, because even though there's a rebirth in that full moon, there's still cleanup, you know, there's still going to be the cleanup phase. And the moon in Cancer is about sort of like emotionally cleansing. Uh, Saturday, I'll just skip to Saturday because Mercury trines um, Jupiter and making that water trine more uh, exact. Yeah. And so these planets that are in this water trine are really showing up on Saturday with Mercury moving in the spot again. And that water trine was in effect before when Mercury came through once before and through retrograde. And so this last time it's coming through, there is going to be a very strong emotional realization that is going to be very magnetic and very just easily transformed. Yeah, I see this um, emotions easily coming to the surface, but there is a very strong intention to transmute and transform because we've been dealing with this for a little while. And Mercury is making its way towards Sagittarius again, which is going to bring a relief with the with the mental things that are being brought up with uh with Mercury going back into Scorpio during the retrograde. Um it's kind of like, well, let's double back and investigate again. We're gonna go back, retrace our steps, look even harder at the things that we were already looking at to see what we missed. And sometimes when you pick up on those things that you missed, it's like, oh man, this is the thing I was afraid I would find. So, dealing with relationships and family and our social fabric, the the trine that Saturn and Jupiter are pretty much locked into right now, um, is really about, well, it's about our structures and our um, hopes and wanting to the need to expand on our foundations. We have lots of big dreams on trying to um like build a bigger table for everybody to sit at. And that's going to take a lot of hard work. And how do we get there? Uh, But everybody's going to have to work very hard on expanding the family, expanding our social family. Um, because we are faced with building that bigger table, you know. And we'll see where that takes us. because it seems like the planets are supporting the idea of a harmonious togetherness, coming together more. It'd be nice if Saturn and Jupiter in a trine were more of the idea that like we can um, help each other out, right? Help each other out. We don't all have to see eye to eye. That's not necessarily in the cards. It just isn't right now. But yeah, Mercury is adding the mental element to this trine between Jupiter and Saturn. And like maybe helping with the communication between um more of like the elder camp and the youth, the eternal youth. Because Jupiter kind of does represent that. That's a little secret. And, you know, this really does look like some kind of harmonious evolution for our society, but not just the society of the United States, but all across the world. There has been this like fragmentation between like the elders and the youth, you know, we call it generational differences. Um, but we were going through a um, a square between Saturn and Jupiter for a little while there. And now Jupiter and Saturn are in a trine, and there's probably going to be more discovering that we're all sort of a little bit more on the same page than we thought we were. Um, that's how the social fabric ends up working, ebbing and flowing, is that um, there has to be some people who push the limit in order for evolution, and there has to be some people holding the line for tradition. And sometimes we're at odds. Sometimes those two camps are at odds. And sometimes they can agree to get along in order to move both goalposts forward. So that's what I'm seeing with this water trine as it moves forward and becomes more fruitful. And then on Sunday, what is the main thing here? Hmm, Sunday, the moon moves into Leo or later on in the day, which means that the moon is in opposition to Pluto. So after the emotional cleansing period of the moon being in Cancer, um, the moon moves into the fire sign of Leo, and we're back on to feeling more of this chaotic energy, It doesn't have to be chaotic, but it might end up, the chaos might end up picking back up where it left off because all of a sudden, Moon back in opposition with Pluto. Pluto's in Aquarius, just slowly fucking shit up, right? Oh, yes. I mean, that's what Pluto is meant to do. That's the purpose. Um, some astrologers believe that Pluto is just like a destroyer, right? And so, with the moon being in the sign of Leo, uh, there is a trine that will be happening to Venus and then the sun. Um, let's see what that happens on Monday. Yeah, yep, Monday and then Tuesday. So, and so, yeah, with the moon making a trine to Venus and then the sun, um, there'll be a focus again on the values of our society, monetary stuff, and it could be uh, just taking in some of the aspects here because it seems like this fiery energy is going to be bringing up some very bright and shiny truth. I don't know if I can see it any other way. Like, look what we found. Uh, Now, I'm not sure who, or, I'm not sure who that's going to be coming from, or why it's going to be coming out, or how it's coming out, but a bright and shiny truth. And we have Monday, it's like, oh, look what we've got on Monday after the weekend of um, sort of like a quiet weekend. And then bam, on Monday, there's a closing square between Mars and Saturn going on. And, I'm really feeling that that is part of this awareness that comes out between Mars and Saturn. Mars is, um, the warrior and is all about action. Mars is also the protector, right? Um, there's a difference between Mars and Saturn. Saturn is the authority figure, and Mars is like the protector. And so this closing, very aware square between Mars and Sagittarius, mm, the protector, who is becoming more and more aware of what he or it needs to protect, and closing in on the authority figure, Saturn in Pisces. And Saturn in Pisces might represent the authority figures letting things pass by. Saturn in Pisces could be about laws and regulations not being enforced. And with Mars, the protector, closing in and becoming more aware, we might find that there is a challenge being taken up, a very special challenge being taken up with this shiny new truth that is coming out for everybody to see. Yes. One of the things to bring up about Jupiter in Cancer being very active in this water trine, I'm going to go back to that real quick, is this idea of the law being revisited for measures of protection. Now, when I saw, um, you know, Mars and Sagittarius, suddenly I see it as this protector. Um, and Jupiter being the ruler or the dispositor of Sagittarius, it occurred to me that family law is going to be coming into focus. Um, and I think that there's going to be some awareness around family law. Yes, that might be one of the things that is the shiny new truth is that we have something coming out about family law. Huh. Wow. Yeah. The moon um, will be trining Mars in that situation and really bringing a trigger to that protector. Mars is the protector. Um, because like we can look at Mars as all of these sort of annoying things like has to be first, the um, aggressive, you know, things like that. But when you look at what Mars is really supposed to be doing, and especially in Sagittarius, you can see the protector and protecting families, especially right now with Jupiter being in Cancer. Yeah. So yeah, and then on Tuesday with um Moon will be trining Mars and squaring the Mercury and squaring Uranus. So it's in this T square with Mercury and Uranus, and in a trine with Mars. That is like, wow. Because I'm leading up to the fact that Neptune goes direct on Wednesday. It's like stationing on Tuesday because of how slow it takes, So finally, Neptune, the great confuser, the big veil over everybody's eyes when it comes to the spiritual truth and why it was so hard to get that silence and hard to meditate, hard to pray, you know, because Neptune was going retrograde in Pisces. It's like very um this big illusion. It's a very big spiritual illusion going on. And so I'm looking forward to Neptune stationing direct. But um but yeah, so Tuesday the moon in a trine with Mars, the protector, that's going to be a big trigger for like waking up out of our stupor. And it's just very, very, very synchronous that we have a Neptune stationing to go direct the very next day, and with the moon going into Virgo, which will be conjuncting the South Node and opposing the North Node. And so the idea of interacting with destiny and the fates, um, our evolutionary journey, we're being met with past issues as Neptune stations direct. It is actually perfect timing because the veil is starting to lift from our eyes with Neptune going direct. Neptune is still in Pisces until next February. So because it moves so slow, we're going to be just still seeing these layers of illusion being peeled away again. So yes, on next Wednesday, wonderfully, Neptune goes direct, and Mercury and Uranus are um, completing or solidifying that opposition between each other. The connection is strong between the uh, Uranus and Mercury opposition. Very, very strong. And at the last degrees here. So I've got Mercury and Uranus at the aneretic degree, basically just totally downloading stuff. Um, so be open to it. We're gonna be receiving messages just spontaneously, instantaneously. And, I don't necessarily feel like you have to get that quiet for these messages, for this one here to come through. Um, because you've got the moon interacting with the south node, and things will just line up. It's just gonna line up. So there's a lot going on that basically is about just surrendering to letting things happen and saying yes to the opportunity as it rises, not forcing things, um, because you're experiencing sort of like a magnetic attraction right now. Um, the other thing I forgot to mention is that the sun passes by the great attractor in Sagittarius. I believe it's at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. The great attractor is it's like a big nebula, or it's where the um constellation of Sagittarius really gets its power from. And that's one of the reasons why Sagittarius is considered so abundant and so full of like faith and life, renewal, rebirth, is this particular constellation, uh, this point in the constellation of Sagittarius. And that influences the zodiac, of Sagittarius. So just remember that it's very, very magnetic time that we're going through. Um, we're going to be attracting the things that we have been working on magnetizing ourselves for. We work on ourselves and we become a magnet for the things that we're supposed to be attracting and that we want to attract. So that's how manifestation works, actually, right? Is you turn yourself into a magnet for those things. So now is the going to be sort of like the fruits of those efforts coming through, which is very exciting to say. Um, 'Cause there are some people that have just been going day to day and they haven't been really working on making themselves a strong magnet for the things that they want to manifest. But there's some people that have really been working on it. And so things will be coming in. Hmm. All right. Well, I think this is a good place to end this. Yes. I hope that if you're listening still, that you got something out of this. And as always, I say that I'm here to do readings for you, and that is true. If you'd like to contact me, my email is aprilthestarwitch@gmail.com, and I can schedule a reading. I do them as recordings. I don't do them live yet because I have a very busy work schedule still. But hopefully one day that will change, and hopefully I'll have more time to do live readings. That's really my goal. Speaking of having goals and magnetizing myself for the things that I want to bring in. So, okay, thanks for joining me again. All right, see you next week.